So whenever I see a problem like this, where it doesn't say equals 0 or equals anything, whenever you see a y, just pretend it's a 0, okay? So I'm going to do my box, x squared 1. But the problem is that the only way to get that is 1, and I can't get the 3. So I cannot factor it. I have to do the quadratic formula, okay? So let me write down the formula over here, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So let me have that formula there. Now, in order to use the formula, I first have to identify a, b, and c. My a is 1, my c is negative 3, and my b is negative 3, and my c is negative 1. And now I'm going to do the formula. First thing I do is write that negative. But then my b is negative 3, so negative of negative 3, plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. Now when you look at this problem, honestly the most confusing part to me, the most messy, is this area right here. So I'm going to take care of that first. So I'm going to rewrite square root. Negative 3 squared means a negative times a negative, which is a positive. 3 times 3, 9. Don't even look at the negatives, just multiply. 4 times 1 is 4, times 1 is 4. And then a negative and a negative make a positive. And then I have square root of 13. Now, all of that turned into that. I know that I can't take the square root of 13, because if I go second square root of 13, it gives me a decimal, so I have to leave it. So now what I'm going to do is simplify this a little bit. Negative of negative 3 is positive 3, plus or minus the square root of 13 over 2 times 1, which is 2. The problem is I need to split it. So I'm going to rewrite it as 3 plus square root of 13 over 2, and 3 minus square root of 13 over 2. But now I need to give a decimal approximation. So in my calculator, I'm going to go 3 plus square root of 13. 3 plus square root of 13. Please try this so that you know how to use your calculator. And then I divide it by 2, so I can just go divided by 2. And then I get $3.30. So x equals 3.30. And then I press clear and start again. Now I'm going to go 3 minus square root of 13. And then I'm going to divide that by 2. And there aren't any dollars, but there's 30 cents. Negative. Okay? All right, let's try the next one. I'm going to use the box if I can, because I think the box is easier than the quadratic formula. So I'm going to go 2x squared, negative 5, negative 10, and I have to get negative 4. Problem is, I can't get a 4, so I have no choice. I have to do the quadratic formula. So let me zoom this out a little bit. I'm going to identify my A, my B, and my C. Now I'm going to go start with negative of negative 4 plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C, all divided by 2 times A. Remember what I said. I think this is the most confusing, so I'm going to acknowledge that first. Negative 4 times negative 4. Negative and a negative make a positive. 4 times 4 is 16. Don't even look at the negatives here. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 5 is 40. And a negative make a positive. And I get square root of 56. So I'm going to look here in my calculator. The second square root of 56. It's not perfect, so I leave it. Now that it's left, I'm going to simplify over here. A negative and a negative make a positive. Plus or minus the square root of 56 over 4. Now we know we've got to split it. 4 plus square root of 56 over 4. 4 minus square root of 56 over 4. Now I pick up my calculator. Clear, clear, clear. And I'm going to go 4 plus square root of 50. Let me move this over here. So I'm going to go 4 plus square root of 56. And then I divide that answer by 4. $2.87. And now I clear, clear, clear. 4 minus second square root of 56 divided by 4. And I get no dollars, but 87 cents. And I'm good to go. I want you to do me a favor and actually change this negative to a plus. So make this problem say plus, please. And now what we're going to do is identify A, B, and C. And you're going to notice something different here, okay? And I'm going to go negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. The issue is that big radical. So 4 squared is 16. 4 times 2 is 8, times 5 is 40, but there's only one negative, so it's negative. And then if you need to use your calculator, you can. And you get negative 24. Okay, we got a problem. You cannot have a negative inside a square root. If you have a negative inside a square root, your answer is NS. No solution. There is no answer that you can find right now in Algebra 1. Okay? Let's do the last problem. And I want you to actually change that to a plus as well. Okay? First thing I do, identify A, identify B, identify C. Negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C, all divided by 2 times A. Now I'm going to do the more difficult part, which is over here. 4 squared is 16. 4 times 4 is 16, times 1 is 16. There's only one negative, so it's negative. Well, 16 minus 16 is 0. Can I take the square root of 0? Yeah, the square root of nothing is still nothing. Okay? So I get 0 from all of that. So now I'm going to bring that back over and go negative 4 plus or minus 0 over 8. Split it. Negative 4 plus 0 over 8. Negative 4 minus 0 over 8. And when I do that, that's negative 4 over 8, which is negative 1/2. Huh. This one's really interesting. And we'll talk about it in a second. And this is also negative 4 over 8, which means the answer is just x equals negative 1/2. That's my only answer. Now, how come on the other ones I had decimals, but this one I needed a fraction? The reason why is I didn't even need to do the quadratic formula. First guy, last guy, multiply 2, 2x, 2x, 2, 2xx, 2x, xx, 2, 2, whoosh. Bring up the 2x, you're not left with anything, so that's 1. 1 times 1 is 1. So it's 2x plus 1, 2x plus 1. Those are the same answers, so I only need to set it equal to 0 one time. And that's how I got negative 1/2. So I shouldn't have even done the quadratic formula, honestly. Okay. Now, what if you do the quadratic formula and you get a decimal? So if you come over here and you went negative 4 divided by 8, and you get a decimal, I'm going to mark that wrong. So here's how you get out of it. There's this button right here, and it says PRB. It's going to change it to a fraction. So if you go second PRB, it changes it to a fraction. So like, let's look at the one above. If you look here, if I went 4 plus square root of 56, and I divide it by 4, and I get a decimal, if I try to second PRB it, it doesn't turn it into a it doesn't turn it into a fraction. So always check and see. Okay? Now, your homework, what is going to be due on Monday, is this right now. And you have time in class to get that done. So just do these 6 problems. You can do the quadratic formula. You don't have to do the quadratic formula. I will say this, though. When you look at number 6, know that your A is 6, your B is negative 2, and your C is 0, if you decide to do the quadratic formula. But if I were you, since they both have an X, I would do a 1 by. So if I were you, that's what I would do. But you still can do the quadratic formula and get the same answer. So if you can, if I were you, I would try to 2 by. And if you can 2 by and it works, then then don't do the quadratic formula. But if you try to 2 by over here and it doesn't work, do the quadratic formula. Your homework are those 6 problems.